All right, just some technical fun. I mean, I'm running a campaign completely all by myself, writing and coming up with policy and ideas, and also doing all the research and education myself. And here I am doing the freaking live streaming and all the technical invention and stuff all at once. Okay, let us see if I have this working. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. All right, let's start over. Apple, or Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, Golf, Hotel, India, Juliet, Kilo, Lima, India, Juliet, Lima, Mike, November, Oscar, Papa, Lima, India. All right, we're doing it. I just can't play it back while I'm uploading. All right, well, I think I'm confident enough in that this is working right now. All right, we're doing it. I just can't play it back while I'm All right, I've done my PR. So I did my technical work. I did my PR. And then now all that's left to do is deliver the speech. And then do the whole everything else. Hey, we're back. Hello, everybody. Today is Thursday, July 18th, 2026. This is Mile Zero, Programming a Mental Model of America. Good morning. My name is Morgan Gross. I'm a filmmaker, inventor, civil rights activist, presidential candidate, and sophomore in what I call President School. Today I'm speaking from the old Sacramento State Historic Park outside the California State Railroad Museum, near the western construction origin of the first Transcontinental Railroad. This is part of my second Transcontinental Expedition. I am traveling east in a Ford F-150 PowerBoost hybrid that functions as transportation, power source, communications platform, shelter, production vehicle. Well, let's just kill the music. All right, we're done with the music. Turn the music off. Turn the music off. Turn the music off. All right, we cut the music. Mile Zero, Programming a Mental Model of America. Good morning. My name is Morgan Gross, Morgan Hunter Gross. I'm a filmmaker, inventor, civil rights activist, presidential candidate, and a sophomore in what I call President School. Today I'm speaking from the old Sacramento State Historic Park outside the California State Railroad Museum. Let me make this so I can read a little better. Focus on the reading and less on the camera work. Okay. Boom. Now I'm 2/3 text. Maybe make the font bigger even? Oh, 150 is too much. 175? Let's do that. Good morning. My name is Morgan Hunter Gross. I'm a filmmaker, inventor, civil rights activist, presidential candidate, and a sophomore in what I call President School. Today I'm speaking from old Sacramento State Historic Park, outside the California State Railroad Museum, near the western construction origin of the first Transcontinental Railroad. This is part of my second Transcontinental Expedition. I'm traveling east in a Ford F-150 PowerBoost hybrid that functions as transportation, power source, communications platform, shelter, production vehicle, and disability accommodation. I am live streaming through a backpack system and camera glasses that I invented in a few minutes. We're going to move from this stationary broadcast into a vehicle and continue east. But this trip almost stopped before it started. I left San Francisco early Tuesday morning. Before I had ever even reached San Francisco, my mother was back in the hospital. I thought seriously about turning around. Instead, I spent the day scouting old Sacramento while waiting for more information. I have to be able so I can see. We eventually understood a little more about what was happening in her health, so I stayed overnight. Yesterday, I entered the Railroad Museum. When it opened, Yesterday, I entered the Railroad Museum. It opened at 10 in the morning, and I stayed until it closed at 5. I read essentially every sign I could. I took the regular tour. I asked questions of multiple docents, climbed into the cab forward, and studied locomotives, looked at the snow shed exhibits, walked around the reconstructed passenger station, and tried to understand the museum not as a collection of old trains, but a model of an entire civilization. It was exhausting. It was exactly the right museum at the right time. I had visited the museum 2 years ago. I would have seen a set of impressive machines. Yesterday, almost everything connected to somewhere I'd already been. I had walked through the old railroad tunnels at Donner Pass. I had stood at the China Wall. I had seen the granite abandoned alignment, the snow sheds, the steep slopes, and the physical size of the mountain. So when a museum docent told a tour group that the summit tunnel had been completed in 16 months, I reacted out loud. I couldn't help it. I interrupted the tour and asked, 16 months, even the China Wall? He looked at me and asked if I had been there. Yes, I had been there. That changed the meaning of the number. I didn't hear 16 months as an isolated fact. I saw the granite, the wall, the tunnels, the snow, the work camps, and the scale of the problem all at once. I learned that the tunnel was attacked from both portals, from vertical shafts sunk in the mountain, creating 4 working faces. That is the same pattern as the railroad itself. The Central Pacific built east from Sacramento. The Union Pacific built west. Inside the mountain, workers built inward from both ends, outward from the middle. It's construction by multiplication. When a problem is too large to solve from one direction, create additional fronts. But every additional front requires surveying, tools, food, housing, explosives, transportation, coordination, and confidence that separate pieces will last. That the separate pieces will meet. That is why I'm really studying not simply the train, but the structure, economics, politics, and the cause and effect behind the train. I've already visited Stanford University and studied the history surrounding Leland Stanford. I have visited Benicia and learned about the Solano, the enormous train ferry that carried entire rail cars across the Carquinez Strait. I had visited Alameda and found the plaque identifying it as the first bay terminal to reach the Central Pacific train. I had been to the Folsom Powerhouse State Historic Park, where I met Jeff Bowers and learned about the generators, governors, circuits, water pressure, and electrical transmission. Here in Sacramento, I found the distribution end of the same system. Water moving through an American river system, turning machinery at Folsom, becoming electricity, crossing 22 miles and entering Sacramento through Station A. 1 year I saw the generator. 1 year ago I saw the generator. This week I saw the distribution point. That is how I am programming my mental model. Follow the complete circuit. The same is true of the railroad. The rail is the only visible line. Behind it were ships, wharves, warehouses, wagon roads, railheads, work camps, telegraph lines, forests, mines, foundations, banks, laws, food systems, and people. Locomotives and machinery had to arrive before the railroad could carry them. Iron and equipment could be built in the east, disassembled, shipped around the Cape Horn, unloaded in California, reassembled, and used to build transportation system that would make that voyage less necessary. What did I write? Locomotives and machinery had to arrive before the railroad could carry them. Yeah, that makes sense. Iron and equipment could be built in the east, disassembled, shipped around the Cape Horn, unloaded in California, reassembled, and used to build transportation system that would make the voyage less necessary. Oh, it was building, I remember, it's building the system that made the whole ship around the horn inevitable. You take the more inefficient way to get there to build the system and then to build the more efficient system. Right, I remember. Right. The previous system delivered the machine that replaced it. Mail transferred from horse to rail and from rail to steamer. From steamer to ferry and from physical transportation to telegraph. Goods transferred from ocean ships to rivers, from rivers to wagons, from wagons to temporary railheads, and from railheads to construction trains. Infrastructure is the art of transferring people, matter, energy, and information from one medium to another without losing the load. Where is it? It's over here somewhere. Where is it? I was here, I found it the first day. All right, let's go this way. That's okay. And every transfer creates a point of power. Oh, we're talking about transfer. Let's go this way. Oh, no. Oh, it's a transfer this way. Every transfer creates a point of power. Who owns the dock? Who controls the food? Who controls the housing? Who sets the rate? Who owns the wagon road? Who decides where the station will be? Who receives the land grant? Who has the latest information? Who can wait and who will starve first? That is why the labor story cannot be separated from the engineering story. Chinese workers performed most of the hardest Central Pacific construction. They were often paid differently, housed differently, and expected to provide their own food. When thousands struck for higher wages and shorter hours, the company controlled the transportation and provisions. The workers controlled the labor, but management controlled the food supply and the practical ability to leave. That is labor power in its most basic form. It connects directly to my previous work studying trafficking and indentured servitude. Exploitation is not limited to sexual slavery. A person can technically be called free while debt, food, housing, immigration status, transportation, discrimination, and physical isolation make leaving nearly impossible. Then the notion that depending on Chinese labor to cross the Sierra moved towards excluding Chinese people from immigration, discrimination, and physical isolation, leaving nearly impossible. Then the nation that depended on Chinese labor to cross the Sierra moved towards excluding Chinese people from immigration, naturalization, and family formation. They wouldn't let the women come. The sequence matters. Recruiting labor, recruit labor, extract labor, minimize the worker's place in the photograph, then write laws excluding the people who made the system possible. Oh, I have to put money in the meter. It's after 10 o'clock. Let's not get a ticket. Giving presidential speeches while having to remember to pay your parking meter. I love this. Doop-a-doo. Oh, we're still live streaming. Hey, we got an hour. All right, $3 an hour. So 3 times 20, that's $75 a day. All right, back on track. Should we stay in the shade for a bit? Yeah, let's stay in the shade. Let's hang out by this old theater that was a replica of what was here, which was a ship that got taken apart and then built into a theater. Look, the sail. They used, and the story goes, is they used the sail. Overheard this. I don't know how true it is. They used sail material in the boat to make this. It reminds me of the Benicia, which is the wood made to, okay, used from a boat. Let's get back to talking about Chinese labor. Recruit labor, extract labor, they minimize and then they write the laws excluding the people to whose work made the system possible. Museums are now trying to confront that. Yesterday, I stood beneath a Native American artwork showing the railroad not simply as a symbol of progress, but as fire, violence, land seizure, and environmental destruction, and a machine cutting through living landscapes. Around the museum are newer signs about women, Chinese workers, and Native communities, Black railroad workers, and the people previously left outside of the central narrative. This is a trash can? Like, it's like all the other wood stuff. I would never have assumed that was a trash can. Okay. All right, let's go find the sign. Let's go. It was cobblestone path. It's pretty sweet. We can debate whether every new exhibit has found the right balance. But the larger question is unavoidable. Who was preserved? Who was photographed? Whose papers entered the archive? Who funded the museum? Who selected the locomotive? Who wrote the original sign? And who now has the authority to revise it? The winner does not merely write the history book. The winner controls acquisition, preservation, cataloging, funding, restoration, placement, lighting, and the words on the wall. One of the most powerful exhibits involves Anna Judah, Theodore Judah's wife. Her paintings and flower pressings documented the Sierra while Theodore searched for a viable railroad route. We usually tell the story through steel, money, legislation, and powerful men. Leave it. But near the beginning of the casual chain was a woman observing the landscape, painting it and pressing flowers. A painting can make a distant place visible. A map makes it measurable. A survey makes it buildable. A political campaign makes it fundable. A law makes it authorized. Labor makes it physical. Rail and telegraph make it continental. Continental logistics help make a nation economically and militarily powerful. A pressed flower did not single-handedly build America, but a pressed flower can sit near the beginning of a chain that ends in a superpower. That's how a flower can make a superpower. That is the kind of connection I am here to understand. I am also learning the question words first. final, largest, only in terminus. Where is the western end of the Transcontinental Railroad? Sacramento is the western construction origin. Promontory is where the construction fronts meet. Alameda was the first bay arrival. Oakland became the last operating terminal. San Francisco was the metropolitan destination reached by ferry. Benicia became part of a later, more direct train ferry route. Niles Canyon preserves part of the later connection to the bay. Every answer can be correct depending on the date and the question. The Pony Express is easier to commemorate because it's a closed system with a short, recognizable life. You're peeing on the historical monuments? I guess this is not a national historical monument, which is the whole point. Okay, let's focus on the script. The Pony Express is easier to commemorate because it was a closed system with a short, recognizable life. It began, operated, and ended. The railroad kept evolving. Its endpoint moved. Its endpoint moved because its success created the next bottleneck. The railroad kept evolving. The endpoint moved because its success caused its next bottleneck. What are you? You're interested in this train. Buddha picked out this one. He wants to go in this one. This is the Sacramento Southern. You having fun? Oh. The railroad kept evolving. Its endpoint moved because success created the next bottleneck. That is also why our technology today may be evolving That is also why our technology today may not be evolving as uniquely fast as we think. Websites and devices become obsolete, but 19th century infrastructure also changed rapidly. A terminal could be replaced within years. A wagon road became a supply route for a railroad. Websites and devices became obsolete, but 19th century infrastructure also changed rapidly. A new terminal could be replaced within years. A wagon road became a supply route for a railroad that made the wagon road secondary. A train ferry solved a water crossing until a bridge replaced the ferry. A tunnel that transferred transportation later became a clearance problem for larger trains and double-stacked freight. The physical world had software versions too. It simply left the old code embedded in the landscape. That is what we are going to investigate today. We are going to find mile 0 at Front and K Streets. Then we are going to locate the old Sacramento plaque on the 2nd Street between I and J Streets and discuss the difference between a state landmark and a National Registry property, a National Historic Landmark District, a National Historic Trail, and an engineering landmark and a National Historic Park. The categories are not trivia. They determine what receives protection, money, interpretation, and national attention. Then we will dock this live stream in the truck and continue east. I began President School by studying places I knew: Santa Monica, Santa Clarita, Los Angeles, and California. I studied city government, county government, water, transportation, disability access, airports, roads, parks, housing, public health, and emergency systems. Then I traveled through California and began connecting the state. Fort Ross, Sonoma, Placerita Canyon, Sutter's Mill, Locke, Folsom, Alameda, Benicia, Stanford, Donner Pass, the Delta, levees, rivers, ports, railroads, electrical systems in the capital. Now it's time to apply the model nationally. I'm not traveling east simply to arrive in Washington. I'm traveling east to understand what Washington words became when they reached the ground. A railroad act, a land grant, a labor system, a tunnel, a town, a forest cut down, a mail route, a military supply line, a corporate funeral, a corporate fortune, a university, an exclusion law, a national park, and a sign on a music wall. This is mile 0, but it is not the beginning of the story. It is the point where many earlier systems converged and where a new national system began moving east. Let's go find it. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen. This is the mile marker 0. It's in recognition of the 150th anniversary of the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad, dedicated May 8th, 2019. Let's take a look at where we are. When we talk about, now we're off script. That was the end of my speech. So here we are, and you would get off the train, pop here. You'd either load up onto the boat and then sail down the shallow water delta to the bay in San Francisco that way. So here we are. This is mile marker 0, right over here. It says California Steam Navigation Company steamers for San Francisco. History happened here. Pony Express River Steamer Antelope. With the news of the discovery of gold in the American River in January 1848, the world rushed into Sacramento and unloaded here at K and Front Street. Stores, hotels, gambling halls, and saloons suddenly appeared on the Sacramento riverfront in less than a year. This sleepy river landing turned into a city, and just a few years later, California's capital. Walking down these streets in the 1850s, you would have heard people speaking a wide range of languages, including Spanish, French, German, Chinese, and more. The gambling halls and saloons made this 24-hour corner through the 1850s, and railroad traffic kept it that way through the 1860s and 1870s. Oh, meatball. Intermodal. That's the thing. Connecting the different things. This is connecting horse to boat. So the Pony Express would come down here, get on the boat, and take the mail to San Francisco. Same thing over the train would bring the train stuff here and put on. One of the original people who wanted to build the Transcontinental Railroad was a guy who had business in China. So he wanted to bring his stuff from China to here and get it onto land that way. Let's go. All right, now is the mission. We found the historical mile marker 0. Now to find the thing that I've been searching for. The point is that this is a California historic place, but it's not a national historic place. It's a national engineering monument, but it's not a Camp 4 in Yosemite is a national historic place. This is not. And that's significant to me because it shows that depends on who's first and what's best. You learn about the gold in Placerita and the first gold discovery at Sutter's Fort or Sutter's Mill versus here. Okay, we got to find the monument. I got to stop and look it up. Where is the sign for the National Historic District in Old Town Sacramento? It's a plaque? A plaque or a sign? Let's go. Doop-a-doop. All right, I'm looking for a wall. Now let's say, all right, so I'm looking for historical landmark number, oh no, Old Sacramento. No, I want the national one. Oh, so I did see it. So there's not a specific national historic monument, um, because it's not a monument. It's a historical landmark. So why doesn't it get its own plaque? You sure? All right, let's go to where the other one is. So, whoa, look at this thing. That's wild. What do you think that is for? It's like a horse garage? Whoa, look at the barred windows. Okay, let's go. There's a missing plaque. Okay, so Old Sacramento is officially the National Historic Landmark District designated on January 12th, 1965. That is different from a national monument, and it is also a higher designation than merely being listed on the National Register of His. And is it higher? Okay, hold on. Is designated as a National Historic Landmark District that is different from a national monument and is also a higher designation than merely being listed in the National Register of Historic Places. Interesting. More importantly, National Historic Landmarks are offered their own official federal bronze plaque by the National Park Service. Historical records specifically say that Old Sacramento's federal plaque was presented on August 21st, 1965 by Interior Secretary Stuart Udall and accepted by Governor Pat Brown. Wow, wow. The picture, the plaque pictured, okay, let's go find the plaque picture. The plaque is over there. All right, let's go. All right. J is the only historical California landmark installed separately in 1966. Wait, so this one was installed in 1966? All right, while we're here, we'll look at the Pony Express monument. This statue commemorates the glory of the Pony Express, which started here at 2:45 a.m. on April 4th, 1860, when Sam Hamilton galloped into a blinding rainstorm on the first lap of the 1,966-mile trip to St. Joseph, Missouri during the 16-month existence. Or 18-month existence, riders and 500 ponies carried 35,000 pieces of mail in no loss, and with loss but one venture funded by Russell, blah, blah, California's. It's hard to read because it's dirty and old and not taken care of. All right, I read it before. So, yes, Old Sacramento received a separate National Historic Landmark plaque. We don't know where it is. Where is the plaque? All right, let's focus on this, what we do have. It's a beautiful statue. It's so alive. It has motion to it. And the way it does the hoof thing, how it has those like spiky things for the hoofs. I don't know if we can get the exposure right. Do you see for the feet? How it's like metal, like shavings almost, that make it look like it's dust. It's pretty fascinating. All right, let's continue. Let's go look at the plaque. The Old Sacramento is officially national. Talk about FedEx, federal. All right, let's go check this out. When I read it, I don't think I remember reading that it said National Historic Place, but I could be wrong. This is the bank. Here. All right, let's read this through my glasses. Here, let me make it sunglass mode. Boink, boink. All right, I'm reading through the camera right now. Old Sacramento, founded in December 1848 by John A. Sutter. We know about that, obviously, because we were in Fort Ross and he's bought the wood there and we were at Sutter's Mill. Established by his father, Captain John A. Sutter, in 1839, state capital in 1854, it was a major distribution point during the gold rush, a commercial and agricultural center and terminus for wagon, trail, stagecoach, riverboat, telegraph, pony express, and the first Transcontinental Railroad. California Register Historic Place. The plaque was placed by California. No mention of National Monument. However, we do have over here, right here, this is a real deal. Pony Express Western Terminal of the BF Hastings Building has been designated a registered National Historic Landmark. Has been designated a registered national under the provisions of the Historic Sites Act of August 21st, 1938. This site possesses exceptional value in commemorating or illustrating the history of the United States. U.S. Department of Interior National Park Service, 1970. This is it. These are the real signs. This is what you, when you go places, and I find these, I do the dance. Now, but the question is, where is the sign for Old Town Sacramento? There should be a matching. So here, this is a California sign for the Hastings Building. So we have the state sign for the Hastings Building and how it impacts California history. This is how the Hastings Buildings applies to the national image of the country and what we're a part of. That's this sign. Now that's fine, but where is that one's parallel national monument sign or national historic district sign that goes along with this? Also, this one's beautiful. It's stunning. I don't know how much detail you can see with it. Look at these tassels. And the mailbag. Each of the mailbags. Pony Express A. Fameister Proctor. SC. Stunning. And then here's the National Pony Express Association sign, which is super cool. And the fun part is Eisenhower is the chairman. Eisenhower is the chairman of the Pony Express. That's super awesome and hilarious and ironic. I don't know if I wrote about that. I talked about it, but I don't know if I'm getting that in there. Let's read the California one while we're here. Oh, we read the Hastings Building. Let's read the Hastings while we're here. Oh, it's going to be hard with my eyes. Western Terminus. This structure, erected in 1852, was occupied during BF Hastings during. I can't read it. I can't read it through the glasses. It's too small. All right, I'm gonna just read it with my eyes. This structure, erected in 1852, was occupied during 1850s by BF Hastings Bank, Wells Fargo, and various state officials. Sacramento Valley Rail and Road and Alta Telegraph Company during 1860, May 1861, the Alta Telegraph Co. and its successor, the California State Telegraph Co., were the agents here for the Central Overland Pony Express, owned, operated by the firm of Russell, Majors, and Waddell. From this historic site, the first overland journey eastward of the Pony Express began April 4th, 1860. California Register of Historical Landmark number 606. Plaque dedicated by blah, 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 blah. A whole bunch of stuff. Yeah. Daughters of the Gold West. This is Historical Society. Look at all these people. This is a plaque dedicated by the California State Park Commission in cooperation with all the people ready. The Sacramento Historic Landmarks Commission, the Sacramento County Historical Society, and then here's the fun ones. The California Historical Society and the Grand Parlors. The native sons and native daughters of the Golden West. Unbelievable. Super cool. All right, so I think so what happened is the city was over here on the left, and then they could put the 5 freeway in over here. So it completely divided the entire city. All of downtown Sacramento is on the other side of this freeway. But one of the fascinating things is how they utilize the space under the freeway, under the interstate, for parking. It's one of the biggest under parking garages things I've ever seen. It's enormous. It goes pretty far that way. So this is the freeway above us. It goes pretty far. It's like probably a dozen lanes or something here. But what's interesting is you can see how they had to do with the fire situation. There's sprinklers and stuff, and then they put those things to contain the smoke or fire under the vehicles. Wherever the freeway is over cars, they had to do this like sprinkler fire thing. All right. Story goes about Ronald Reagan having dinner in one of the train cars and wanting to set up the museum is a super cool story. Something that's fun about California is trees. Trees can't lie. So we started off with California sycamore right here. Not this tree, but the one over there. And then what's fun that they do here is they planted some redwoods back here. Look, there's redwoods back there. And then there's Amtrak. So you have the rail yards over there, and then here's Amtrak going over the bridge. Let's see if we can see. And there it goes, under the bridge over the river. So a full Amtrak station, what was an enormous rail yard, is probably going to get redeveloped if I had to put my guess in the future on what's going to happen over there. So what's left is the rail museum. Now their rail is not strong enough for the big trains. I learned about that, but a whole nother thing. So this museum is fascinating. And we've got redwoods back here, and there's another section of redwoods over there. I'm very interesting. This museum is actually quite good, to be honest. What is interested? What are you going to make a bowel movement? Yep, got it right. Please hold, audience, while we fixing that. While I'm waiting for. All right, how do I hold my mouse while I pick up his poop? Oh, maybe my mouth. I already done a mouse. I got already done a mouse with my mouth. Oh, they had that thing with the pallet. They had the thing where you put the mouse on the roof of your pallet, and you can move your tongue. You can move your tongue and move your mouth with your tongue. That's what I really want. But I'm muffling with my mouth. I got this stuff in my mouth right now, but I could be operating the mouse. I have the mouse in my mouth. I have a mouse in my mouth. There's a mouse in my mouth. If I could be operating the mouse with my tongue, I have a mouse in my mouth. I can operate the cursor with my tongue. Okay. So this was the California Railroad Museum. It's a fascinating place. I literally spent the whole day here. I was exhausted. I can't even tell you what I learned about snow sheds. I mean, we're going to get in the car and we're going to go to we're going to have the full audio speech. Oh, here's downtown. So as you can see, what happened was, this is, and they had to move the road around downtown. See, they were going to do it, but because it's a historic thing, they had to move it around. Now, they were originally going to knock like more of this down, but they ended up saving it, I was reading. So that's the building with all the monuments. The HM must have been the next block over. There's a walkway underneath here to go here. And now this is a whole like massive development thing that happened over here with like a stadium or something like that. But you can see right here, it's a fascinating world of what we are left with later on in life, and we don't even know as kids. I mean, this was just something you drive by, and it was something over here when you're traveling by, and I kind of knew it was over here and whatever. Oh, boats in Sacramento. Well, that's weird. I don't think about the deep water port, the commercial shipping, the levees, the Chinese workers, all of it. It's so deep. It's a Smithsonian museum, Smithsonian affiliate. What's that sense? Oh, let's get that logo. Oh, the shade. A lot of kids. One of the youngest museums I've ever been to. It's like literally just a bunch of like 7 and 8 year olds at the museum. I mean, there were more people upstairs looking at the toy trains than like anything else. All right. So this is the building of the Big Four. We walked over there and then we started this most recent stream in the reflection over there. But this is the Big Four. This was Stanford, Huntington, the other two. And then the engineer guy, he wasn't happy with what was going. So he went all the way east to try and get more funding to buy them out. But on his way, he caught yellow fever in Panama. The map. And can you imagine having to go all the way from over there around here? It's insane. The map is broken exactly where we need it. So this is it. This is the people that were selling shovels and equipment and jeans to the miners made more money. The discussion of a 25-cent shovel being sold for $5 out here. I brought the shovel for 25 cents in Massachusetts or whatever, and then brought it here. And that is our full loop, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the State Historic Park. I love this place. State parks are just really quite good here in California. It's a great grass area. It's like preserved on the let's go look at the wharf over there. Well, that's the last bit, and then we'll go to the car and get this really going. I still have no idea how much battery I have right now, so see about that. I have no battery gauge. I need an extension, then I could be plugged into the car for indefinite. That would be sick. All right, we were here earlier. We saw the tourney thing. But what I want you to see is something that state parks do, which is kind of interesting, is they do kind of just let things... Let's go. He rang the bell. The kid rang the bell on this train. I want to do that. Now that I saw him do it, I'm going to do it. They'll let it kind of just go. And I walk down that path. It's like this like rivery path. It's pretty cool. And they just kind of let nature do nature things. Now, it could be redeveloped. It could do a whole bunch more stuff. But with State Park, they're so strapped for cash. There's an efficiency thing with what you spend your money on and what you don't. But can you just imagine boats? How are you tacking up here? I don't understand that. I have no idea. Are you tacking upstream? How do you go upstream in a sailboat? That seems crazy. I have no understanding. How do they? How did sailboats get all the way to Sacramento up the river? That's, cruising. It looks like it's moving at like, 3 or 4 knots. I can't imagine there's enough room to tack back and forth up and down the. Or would it be downwind up the stream? I have no idea. All right, here we go. Here's a rail switch over. So with this, you'd be able to switch the rail between 1, 2, and 3. And then that was connected to this. And this has 3 positions. 1, 2, 3. And you'd be able to tell, I guess, from the flag which track you're going to go to see if you need to switch it. Absolutely fascinating. I've never seen 3. I've only seen 2 before. So what does it do? The metal bends? Oh, no, the metal... Oh, this whole thing, all 3. 1, 2, 3, that whole thing must slide back and forth. Your instinct is correct. They could not simply tack a large sailing ship neatly back and forth through the narrow river at Old Sacramento. They used a combination of favorable wind, tide, sailing where possible, and brute force rope work where it was not. What? The route was also less like climbing a fast mountain river than it appears. The Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta is tidal. The flood tides pushing water inland, and even the rivers is measurably tide affected an ordinary low flow can time the portions of the tide reduced, working against them. The prevailing summer delta breeze comes inland from the bay and moves northward to Sacramento. So yes, for substantial stretches, the wind would actually blow approximately upriver, letting the vessels run downwind or sail on a broad reach rather than tack directly against the wind. Because the river meanders, however, the angle constantly changed. Woof. And here is the remarkable part. When the crooked channel... That was cool. So just moving stuff around, picking up trains, doing stuff. So fascinating. It's weird how they can move so slow and so delicate. They're like lumbering giants. Whoa, this guy's changing the thing. He's changing the track right now. Enhance. Enhance. All right. And here's their remarkable part. When the crooked channel became too tight, the crews warped the ship upriver. They carried a rope forward, attached it to a tree, and then hauled the vessel forward toward that tree, sometimes with passengers helping. Historical accounts also say ships... Oh, now we're going to the other track. We're moving it over. Oh, he's just parallel parking a train. That's insane. He's literally just parallel parking a train. Oh my God. Well, that was awesome. Okay. All right. Historical accounts also say ships anchored at night. Okay. They carried the rope forward, attached a tree, and then hauled the vessel toward the tree, sometimes the passengers helping. Historical accounts also say ships anchored at night because islands, snags, sandbars, and overhanging branches made navigating too dangerous in the darkness. Oh my god. So the sequence might be sail with the delta breeze, use favorable wind, tack through wider regions, anchor when stalled, haul the ship around difficult bends with ropes, and repeat. This explains travel time. Early brigs, barks, and schooners required 10 days to 5 weeks to get from San Francisco to Sacramento. 10 days to 5 weeks? Ugh. Depending on wind and tide, later steam tugs towed sailing vessels through places such as Steamboat Slow. When the wind died, steamships then reduced the trip from weeks to hours and rapidly displaced sail on the river. So when you stand there looking at the current, the answer is not the old ships were magically maneuvering. The voyage was an exhausting stop and start operation using an entire environment: wind, tide, anchors, trees, ropes, and human muscle. So in Steamboat Slow, that was why it's named that. And then it was basically, those were like port tenders, or like, and the harbor, then you have the tugs, I'm guessing. What a, wow, let's keep going. He's coming back. I'm not really a train person, but it's kind of cool. I mean, I'd much rather look at a B-36 or something, but definitely cool. So impressive, especially being inside the cab forward and all the future stuff. It was like being in just like this super amazing thing. Yeah, Steamboat Slow was essentially the preferred steamboat bypass. And previously, yes, Steamboat Slow was the preferred steamboat bypass. It had previously been called Middle Fork or West Branch, but Steamboat Slow took over because steam vessels regularly used it between Lower Delta and Sacramento. The route was roughly 8 miles shorter than following the wind main or Old Sacramento River that could have saved several hours. Your harbor comparison is close with one distinction. A tender mainly carries people, supplies, mail, and other equipment ashore. A tug or towboat supplies propulsion moving. Most Sacramento steamboats were actually river packets, the equivalent of a combined bus, truck, ferry, express service. They carried their own passengers, mail, persons. Some steam vessels also performed the tug function, towing barges, schooners. So when wind-powered vessels came into the delta, a steam towboat would take over much as a harbor tug assist was such an ocean freighter day. It could pull the sailing vessel through the narrow slows around bends against the current and into Sacramento waterfront without needing space to tack. The slow itself functioned almost like a transportation shortcut or a maritime freeway, straighter, shorter, protecting from some wind, and well-suited shallow depth paddle wheelers. Steamboats were not merely a little harbor assistant, though. It was a principal vehicle like using a freeway. That is also why the transition was so dramatic. Instead of sailing ships spending days waiting for the right wind, tide, or tow, a steamboat can maintain a schedule. Steam separated river transportation from the wind, just as railroads later separated over transportation from horse endurance. Wow. Awesome. Yes. There's the shot. Yeah, let's get the shot. So the F-150, let's get it. The American flag in California. How about here? There's the F-150 on that. Doing some manual photoshopping. There's the F-150. Here we go, baby. Whew. I wanted some music, I think. Oh, I gotta throw the trash away. Do you think I'll make it? Do I think I have the range to make it to the trash can? I got my cell phones in the car. How far can I go away? We're still going. Oh, it's cutting down. Oh, that's it. That's game. Oh, we're still going. All right, that was about the limit. I'm impressive. Oh my God, I am so tangled right now. I am so tangled. This is unbelievable. If you saw what's happening with cables and dog leashes, you would be laughing hysterical right now. Oh my God. This is hilarious. Oh my. What the balls? That was insane. It's insane. All right, let's figure this out. All right, we're gonna try something I haven't tried before. I probably should have tested this, but I haven't. Kind of just the nature of how I roll. Glasses away. It's so long with my finger thing. Got it! All three. This is crazy. Uh, Testing. Testing. 1, 2. Testing. 1, 2. Alright. That's reasonable. I could be running noise canceling today. Testing. I mean, that's cutting it out pretty good. That's impressive. There's a whole tour group going. See the whole tour group? What do you think they're talking about? How's this camera? Pretty good. Me up a little bit. Okay. That's cool. Ah, got something at least.
Speech to eastbound. The systems beneath the railroad. Written for the AI voice to begin once the truck is docked and moving. Approximately 35 to 45 minutes depending on pacing and pauses. Opening handoff. The first
Speech to eastbound. The
Speech to eastbound. The
Speech to eastbound. The systems beneath the railroad. Written for the AI voice to begin once the truck is docked and moving. Approximately 35. To 45 minutes depending on pacing and pauses.
Now we have heartbeat. What am I missing? Right? Okay, the robot's writing about me. To have it from my perspective, I need my. Let's do the. We're providing with a robot. Let's keep the robot its voice. It's gonna be a little wild. Wow.
Eastbound, the systems beneath the rail.
Hey, I'm ready. I've got a. Hey there.
Yo, how's it going? I've got time to talk if you do.
Eastbound, the systems beneath the railroad. We are now leaving Old Sacramento and beginning the eastbound leg of Morgan Gross's second Transcontinental Expedition and presidential campaign. A few moments ago, Morgan spoke outside the California State Railroad Museum near the western construction origin of the first Transcontinental Railroad. Now the live stream is transferring into the vehicle. The cameras are docking. The communications backpack is continuing the broadcast. Morgan is driving, and an artificial voice is carrying the narrative. That transfer is not separate from today's subject. It is the subject. A person speaks at a historic location. A microphone turns sound into an electrical signal. Cameras turn light into data. A backpack combines the signals and sends them through a communications network. The speaker enters a hybrid truck that supplies transportation, shelter, electricity, communications, production capacity, and disability accommodation. The human voice hands the story to an artificial voice so the driver can concentrate on the road. The message continues, but the medium changes. Horse to railroad, railroad to river steamer, steamer to ferry, mailbag to telegraph, water pressure to mechanical rotation to electricity, electricity to a transmission line, human voice to artificial voice, historic railroad to interstate highway. This is intermodal communication in real time. The live stream does not exist in any one object. It exists in the successful handoffs among the cameras, microphone, backpack, truck, electrical system, software, network, narrator, driver, and audience. That is one of the central lessons of this expedition. The system is not merely the object. The system is the relationship among the objects. This journey almost turned around before Morgan reached Sacramento. He left San Francisco early Tuesday morning. Before he had even arrived here, his mother was back in the hospital. The historical expedition suddenly collided with the immediate reality of caregiving, medical uncertainty, incomplete information, and family. Eastbound, the systems beneath the railroad. We are now leaving Old Sacramento and eastbound, the systems beneath the railroad. We are now leaving Old Sacramento and beginning the eastbound leg of Morgan Gross's second Transcontinental Expedition and presidential campaign. A few moments ago, Morgan spoke outside the California State Railroad Museum, near the western construction origin of the first Transcontinental Railroad. Now the live stream is transferring into the vehicle. The cameras are docking. The communications backpack is continuing the broadcast. Morgan is driving, and an artificial voice is carrying the narrative. That transfer is not separate from today's subject. It is the subject. A person speaks at a historic location. A microphone turns sound into an electrical signal. Cameras turn light into data. A backpack combines the signals and sends them through a communications network. The speaker enters a hybrid truck that supplies transportation, shelter, electricity, communications, production capacity, and disability accommodation. The human voice hands the story to an artificial voice so the driver can concentrate on the road. The message continues, but the medium changes. Horse to railroad, railroad to river steamer, steamer to ferry, mailbag to telegraph, water pressure to mechanical rotation to electricity, electricity to a transmission line, human voice to artificial voice, historic railroad to interstate highway. This is intermodal communication in real time. The live stream does not exist in any one object. It exists in the successful handoffs among the cameras, microphone, backpack, truck, electrical system, software, network, narrator, driver, and audience. That is one of the central lessons of this expedition. The system is not merely the object. The system is the relationship among the objects. This journey almost turned around before Morgan reached Sacramento. He left San Francisco early Tuesday morning. Before he had even arrived here, his mother was back in the hospital. The historical expedition suddenly collided with the immediate reality of caregiving, medical uncertainty, incomplete information, and family responsibility. He considered turning around. Instead, he spent the day scouting Old Sacramento while waiting to understand more about her condition. When the situation became somewhat clearer, he stayed overnight and entered the California State Railroad Museum the next morning. He remained there from 10 o'clock until closing at 5. He read nearly every sign. He took the regular tour. He asked multiple docents additional questions. He explored the passenger station. He studied the tunnels and snowshed exhibits. He examined the locomotives. He climbed into the cab forward. He looked at the temporary and newly added exhibits about Native Americans, Chinese workers, women, and people who had been left outside older versions of the railroad narrative. It was exhausting.
I gotta figure out this audio playback issue. And it's not gonna keep going through. Oh, I gotta have you.
Beneath the railroad, we are now leaving Old Sacramento.
Noise, kill, music, work.
Sacramento, and beginning the eastbound, the systems beneath the railroad. We are now leaving Old Sacramento and beginning the eastbound leg of Morgan Gross's second Transcontinental Expedition and presidential campaign. A few moments ago, Morgan spoke outside the California State Railroad Museum, near the western construction origin of the first Transcontinental Railroad. Now the live stream is transferring into the vehicle. The cameras are docking. The communications backpack is continuing the broadcast. Morgan is driving, and an artificial voice is carrying the narrative. That transfer is not separate from today's subject. It is the subject. A person speaks at a historic location. A microphone turns sound into an electrical signal. Cameras turn light into data. A backpack combines the signals and sends them through a communications network. The speaker enters a hybrid truck that supplies transportation, shelter, electricity, communications, production capacity, and disability accommodation. The human voice hands the story to an artificial voice, so the driver can concentrate on the road.
San Francisco's
The message continues, but the medium changes. Horse to railroad. Railroad to river steamer. Steamer to ferry. Mailbag to telegraph. Water pressure to mechanical rotation. Mechanical rotation to electricity. Electricity to a transmission line. Human voice to artificial voice. Historic railroad to interstate highway. This is intermodal communication in real time. The live stream does not exist in any one object. It exists in successful handoffs among the cameras, microphone, backpack, truck, electrical system, software network, narrator, driver, and audience. That is one of the central lessons of this expedition. The system is not merely the object. The system is the relationship among the objects. This journey almost turned around before Morgan reached Sacramento. He left San Francisco early Tuesday morning. Before he had even arrived here, his mother was back in the hospital. Expedition suddenly collided with the immediate reality of caregiving, medical uncertainty, incomplete information, and family responsibility. He considered turning around. Instead, he spent the day scouting old Sacramento, while waiting to understand more about her condition. When the situation became somewhat clear, he stayed overnight and entered the California State Railroad Museum the next morning. He remained there from 10 o'clock until closing at 5. He read nearly every sign. He took the regular tour. He asked multiple docents additional questions. He explored the passenger station. He studied the tunnels and snowshed exhibits. He examined the locomotives. He climbed into the cab forward. He looked at the temporary and newly added exhibits about Native Americans, Chinese workers, women, and people who had been left outside, older versions of the railroad narrative. It was exhausting. It was also exactly the right museum at exactly the right time. Had Morgan visited the museum several years earlier, he would have seen a collection of impressive machines. This time, almost every object connected to somewhere he had already physically experienced. He had walked through the old railroad tunnels at Donner Pass. He had stood beside the China Wall. He had seen the granite. He had seen the surviving and abandoned snowshed infrastructure. He had looked down the old alignment and felt the scale of the mountain. So when a museum docent said that the major summit work had been accomplished in roughly 16 months, Morgan reacted aloud. He could not help it. He had already seen the place with his own eyes. He did not hear 16 months as an isolated fact. His mind immediately reconstructed the granite, the tunnels, the retaining wall, the snow, the construction camps, the tools, the workers, the blasting, and the physical size of the problem. He asked, almost in disbelief, even the China Wall? The docent realized that Morgan had been there. That is the difference between memorizing history and possessing a physical mental model of it. For someone who has never visited Donner Pass, 16 months is a number. For someone who has walked the tunnels, touched the granite, and stood beside the China Wall, 16 months is almost incomprehensible. The tunnel also reveals a pattern that repeats throughout the railroad. The Central Pacific built east from Sacramento. The Union Pacific built west. At Donner Summit, crews excavated inward from the eastern and western portals. A vertical shaft was sunk into the mountain so crews could also excavate outward from the interior. One enormous tunnel became 4 working faces. Construction moved from both ends and from the middle. The same organizational principle, repeated at multiple scales. When a problem is too large to solve from one direction, create more fronts. Every additional front creates additional requirements. More workers, more surveying, more explosives, more tools, more food, more housing, more water, more medical support, more debris removal, more supervision, more transportation, more opportunities for error, more need for the separately built sections to meet in the correct place. That is the real subject of this trip. Not simply the locomotive, not simply the rail. The structure, economics, politics, labor, logistics, environment, information, and cause and effect behind the visible machine. Morgan had already visited Stanford University and studied the railroad wealth and political power behind its creation. He had visited Benicia and learned about the Solana, the enormous train ferry that carried entire railroad cars across the Carquinez Strait, before a bridge provided a more permanent solution. He had visited Alameda and found the plaque identifying it as the first bay terminus reached by the Central Pacific System. He had been to Folsom Powerhouse State Historic Park, where he met Jeff Bowers and learned about turbines, generators, mechanical governors, electrical circuits, water pressure, and long-distance transmission. Here in Sacramento, he found the receiving and distribution side of that electrical system. Water moved through the American River system. Water turned to turbines. The turbines turned generators. The generators created electricity. The electricity traveled approximately 22 miles. Station Air received and distributed it through Sacramento. 1 year, Morgan studied the generating end. This week, he found the distribution end. That is how this expedition builds knowledge. Follow the complete circuit. Do not stop at the impressive machine. Ask where its energy comes from. Ask where its materials come from. Ask where its workers sleep. Ask where the output goes. Ask who owns the transfer point. Ask who writes the law. Ask who receives the profit. Ask who absorbs the risk. The railroad is often represented as 2 steel lines crossing a continent. But before the railroad could carry the materials needed to build a railroad, older transportation systems had to carry them. Locomotives and machinery were manufactured in the East. They could be disassembled, packed into crates, loaded aboard ships, carried around Cape Horn, unloaded in California, reassembled, and used to construct the transportation network that would make that ocean voyage less necessary. The old system delivered the machinery that replaced it. Before the railroad could build the railroad, it needed wagon roads. Before the locomotive could deliver food to the railhead, animals and wagons had to deliver food to the people laying the rails. Before the train could transport lumber, workers had to cut trees and create the first ties, trestles, camp buildings, and sheds. Before rail and telegraph could move information across the continent, messages traveled by horse, stagecoach, ship, steamer, and courier. New infrastructure is usually born inside the older infrastructure. It will later make secondary. The railroad did not suddenly replace the world. It grew through a series of transfers. Ocean ship to wharf, wharf to warehouse. Warehouse to riverboat, riverboat to wagon. Wagon to temporary railhead. Railhead to construction train. Construction train to worker camp. Worker camp to tunnel face. The same was true of mail. Horse to train. Train to steamer. Steamer to ferry. Physical letter to telegraph. Later, the railway mail service turned the train itself into a moving sorting facility. Mail was not merely transported. It was processed while in motion, so it could be transferred more efficiently at the next junction. Infrastructure is the art of transferring people, matter, energy, and information from one medium to another without losing the load. And every transfer creates a possible bottleneck. Who owns the dock? Who controls the warehouse? Who controls the road? Who decides the train schedule? Who provides the food? Who controls the housing? Who owns the telegraph line? Who sets the freight rate? Who receives the land grant? Who has the most current information? Who can survive a delay? Who starves first? That is why the labor story cannot be separated from the engineering story. Chinese workers performed much of the most difficult Central Pacific construction. They were often paid differently. They were housed differently. They frequently had to provide their own food. They worked in isolated places where the company controlled transportation and access to supplies. Thousands of Chinese workers struck for higher pay, shorter hours, and improved conditions. They controlled one critical resource, their labor. But the company controlled the food, the railroad, the camps, the isolation, and the workers' practical ability to leave. The workers could stop working. Management could prevent provisions from reaching them. That is labor power in its most basic form. A person can be legally described as free while the practical cost of refusing work is hunger, homelessness, debt, violence, deportation, blacklisting, or abandonment in a remote landscape. Morgan recognizes that structure from his previous film work involving trafficking, exploitation, and indentured servitude. Human trafficking is not only sexual exploitation. Labor coercion can be created through debt, through control of housing, through immigration status, through transportation dependency, through confiscation of documents, through threats, through isolation, through control of food, through the knowledge that leaving one employer may mean losing the ability to survive. Historical precision matters. Chinese railroad workers should not all be reduced to one identical legal status. They were not simply property in the same legal sense as enslaved people. But legal freedom does not eliminate coercive power. The essential questions remain. Can the worker leave? Can the worker obtain food independently? Can the worker travel? Can the worker bring family members? Can the worker complain without retaliation? Can the worker refuse dangerous work and remain alive? Then came a second stage. The United States benefited from Chinese labor when it needed the railroad built. The railroad was built. The country moved toward laws that excluded Chinese people from immigration, naturalization, re-entry, and ordinary family formation. The sequence matters. Recruit the labor, extract the labor. Minimize the worker's presence in the celebratory image. Then exclude the people whose work made the system possible. That is not an incidental side story. It is part of the political economy of the railroad. The railroad was built during a period when law, race, labor, land, corporations, and national power were being reorganized together. The Pacific Railway Act did not simply announce that a railroad should exist. It created financial and legal incentives. It provided a framework involving federal authorization, land loans, rights of way, corporate power, and national military and postal objectives. The government wanted a functioning continental connection. The companies had incentives connected to construction, mileage land, financing, and control of future routes. When the public outcome and the payment metric are not perfectly aligned, rational private behavior can produce irrational public results. The government wanted connection. The companies were rewarded for building. The companies continued to survey, grade, and establish claims until the government finally fixed the place where they were required to meet. Near promontory, the competing grades remained physical evidence of institutional rivalry and redundant effort. The companies were not necessarily misunderstanding the incentive. They were optimizing it. That is an important distinction. Poor government contracting is not a new American problem. Mission creep is not new. Fragmented authority is not new. Redundant systems are not new.
Street District.
Rewarding activity instead of results is not new. A badly written incentive can make an intelligent contractor produce a wasteful public outcome. If government pays for miles, it should expect miles. If it pays for hours, it should expect hours. If it reimburses costs without strong discipline, it should expect weaker pressure to control costs. If agencies receive funding according to how many cases, inspections, appointments, arrests, procedures, or beds they process, they may optimize the activity rather than solving the underlying problem. The same failure appears in modern city government. The insect problem can involve vector control, agricultural authorities, environmental health, code enforcement, animal services, public health, housing and property management. Each agency may have a real specialty. The problem appears when no one owns the final outcome. The resident does not need 6 departments to document their activity. The resident needs the infestation solved. A similar issue appears in defense procurement. Some experimental projects genuinely require flexible cost reimbursement contracts because no one can accurately predict the final cost of a first-of-its-kind aircraft, missile, submarine, communications platform, or research program. But cost reimbursement can also reduce pressure to economize. A larger and longer project can support more employees, facilities, overhead, contract modifications, and follow-on work. A fixed-price contract can create different failures, unrealistic bids, hidden problems, corner cutting, endless change orders, or contractor collapse. The answer is not a slogan. The answer is disciplined incentive design. Define the actual public outcome. Allocate risk to the party capable of controlling it. Create independent technical oversight. Establish milestones. Measure lifecycle cost. Protect whistleblowers. Require transparent reporting. And define the stopping point before the two contractors build past each other. Promontory is not only where the railroad met. It is a monument to the importance of completion criteria. The economics of the gold rush reveal another recurring pattern. The person searching for gold absorbed enormous physical risk. The miner might find gold. The miner might find nothing. But the miner still needed food. The miner still needed tools. The miner still needed boots, clothing, shelter, transportation, credit, and information. A shovel that cost a small amount near its manufacturer could be sold for many times that amount in an isolated mining economy. An egg could cost an extraordinary share of a worker's daily or monthly income. The object had not fundamentally changed. Grain hat, manufacturing, packing, insurance, warehousing, river transfer, wagon transport, scarcity, speculation, risk. Local inflation is a map of infrastructure and power. A modern inflation calculator can translate an old price into current dollars, but that does not fully explain the lived economy. The better question is, how much labor did one egg command? How many hours of dangerous work purchased a shovel?
What are those?
What share of monthly wages went to food? Who could store inventory? Who could extend credit? Who knew when the next shipment was arriving? Who could survive long enough to charge scarcity prices? Most dependable fortunes often came not from the uncertain act of extraction, but from controlling what the extractive workforce could not avoid purchasing. Merchants captured demand. Shipping companies captured transportation.
This is what you do.
Banks captured credit. Landowners captured rising land values. Railroads captured movement. Corporate insiders captured contracts. Politicians and lawyers shaped charters, land grants, rights, and routes. Eastern manufacturers made money from Western scarcity without ever entering a California mine.
Road turned into a
The person
parking lot.
swinging the pick absorbed the direct risk.
What?
The person controlling the bottleneck could receive payment from every person swinging a pick. That pattern continues today. The person creating content may receive less than the platform controlling distribution. The farmer may receive less than the companies controlling processing, transport, finance, and retail access. The patient may have less power than the insurer, hospital network, pharmaceutical intermediary, or information system controlling access to care. The public may finance infrastructure while private actors capture the most valuable transfer points. The repeated question is, who owns the bottleneck? Sacramento itself is a study in transfer points. It is not simply the state capital. It is a river city, a floodplain city, a levee city, a railroad city, a mining supply city, a political city, an agricultural city, a communications city, an electrical distribution city, a city connected to San Francisco Bay and the Pacific Ocean through the Sacramento River and the Delta. A person can stand beside an inland river and still be looking at ocean infrastructure. Sea level rise, tides, levees, flood control, agriculture, ports, habitat, freshwater supply, shipping, and urban development all meet in the Delta system. The Sacramento Deepwater Ship Channel represents another version of the same infrastructure ratchet visible in railroad tunnels and modern ports. Ships became larger. Channels had to become deeper. Freight containers became stackable. Tunnels and bridges required more clearance. Trains became heavier. Rails, curves, grades, brakes, yards, and bridges had to evolve. A transportation system is never finished because the vehicles using it continue to change. That also explains why the western end of the Transcontinental Railroad is difficult to place on one national plaque. Morgan found the California Historical Landmark marker for the old Sacramento district. He found the separate state and national recognition associated with the B.F. Hastings building. He found the Pony Express national designation. But the visible federal sign announcing the larger Old Sacramento National Historic Landmark district appears to be missing. That absence is meaningful. The district may possess national status in federal records without presenting one obvious national marker to a person walking through it. The Pony Express is easier to define. It was a short-lived, closed-ended system. It followed a recognizable relay network. It operated for a limited period. It ended when newer communications infrastructure replaced it. The railroad is harder. Its success caused its endpoint to move. Sacramento was the western construction origin. Promontory was the joining point. Alameda was the first bay arrival. Oakland became the durable operating terminal. San Francisco was the major economic and passenger destination reached by ferry. Niles Canyon formed part of the route connecting the system toward the bay. Benicia later became part of a more direct train ferry route. A bridge eventually replaced the ferry. Each answer is correct within a different date and definition.
R-line.
History textbooks prefer one clean sentence. Infrastructure produces versions. The physical world had software updates too. A terminal opened and soon became secondary. A wagon road helped build a railroad that reduced the wagon road's importance. A train ferry solved a crossing until a bridge replaced it. A tunnel that transformed transportation later became a clearance problem for larger trains. A wooden snowshed solved one snow problem while creating fire, smoke, maintenance, and material problems. A cab-forward locomotive was designed with the cab placed in front, because the previously built tunnels and snowsheds concentrated smoke around crews operating a conventional locomotive. The locomotive was not arranged backward as a novelty. It was a human factor's response to the infrastructure already in place. The tunnel solved the mountain. The snowshed solved the snow. The tunnel and snowshed created a smoke problem. The cab forward addressed the smoke problem. Every solution changes the environment in which the next problem appears. Inside the museum, Morgan climbed aboard Southern Pacific Cab Forward number 4294. It is the only surviving example of its class, and represents one of the final and most developed forms of Southern Pacific steam power. It used one enormous boiler to supply steam to two articulated groups of driving wheels. The articulation allowed a very long and powerful locomotive to follow curves. The cab was placed at the front so the engineer and fireman could see and breathe more safely while moving through the Sierra's tunnels and snowsheds. Morgan learned about boiler pressure. Approximately 250 pounds per square inch in the cab forward. Lower pressures in earlier steam locomotives. Different pressure levels in modern industrial, military, aviation, and submarine systems. A number becomes more meaningful when it can be compared with another number. Comparison creates scale. This is why Morgan is not trying simply to memorize every plaque and specification. He is building a network of structural facts. 16 months, 4 tunnel faces, 2 continental construction fronts, 1 large boiler supplying 2 articulated engine sections. A cab moved to the front because smoke made the older arrangement dangerous. Water at Folsom becoming electricity in Sacramento. An entire train placed aboard a ferry because there was no bridge. A railroad endpoint that kept moving because the system kept evolving. A labor strike defeated through control of provisions. A national project that required an amendment to stop contractors from continuing beyond the useful meeting point. These are compression keys. Each one unlocks a larger section of the mental model. The same model applies to information. Before the telegraph and railroad, California operated under extreme communications delay. An event happened on the Pacific coast. A report traveled by ship or overland. Officials in Washington received information that was already months old. They had to decide whether it was accurate. They issued instructions. The instructions traveled back. By the time those instructions arrived, the local situation could be completely different. Morgan compares this to edge computing. The distant commander possessed local geography, ships, personnel, and immediate observations. But the commander lacked current national instructions. Washington possessed formal authority and broader strategy. But Washington's information about the edge was stale. The false American seizure of Monterey in 1842 and the later seizure during the actual war illustrate 2 opposite dangers. Act too quickly on inaccurate information, or delay action while waiting for confirmation that cannot arrive in time. Gold news followed the same latency pattern. A local discovery transformed California before the East received verified information. Rumors traveled, evidence traveled. Officials debated credibility. President Polk's confirmation helped turn reports into national certainty. Then people, goods, tools, and capital traveled west. The system moved in waves: event, rumor, verification. National announcement, investment, migration, shortage, speculation, oversupply. The market closest to the event reacted first. Distant investors reacted later, but often arrived with greater capital and organizational power. The telegraph reduced the latency. The railroad reduced it further. Telephone, radio, aviation, television, the internet, satellites, and artificial intelligence reduced it again. But reduced latency does not eliminate unequal control. The owner of the network may see information first. The corporation may control rates and routing. The platform may decide which message becomes visible. The infrastructure solves one information problem and creates a new gatekeeper. The Pony Express belongs inside that progression. It was an emergency bridge across an incomplete national communications network. Horse relays carried mail through the places not yet connected by rail or telegraph. Railroads and steamers carried the mail where those systems existed. The telegraph eventually eliminated the need for the relay. Decades later, Aoni the dog became an emotional symbol of the mature railway mail service. Aoni followed the mailbags. He rode trains with postal clerks. The tags attached to his harness documented towns and railroads almost like analog location metadata. The Pony Express represents mail before the Continental Communications Network was complete. Aoni represents mail after the railroad became the network. The person, animal, or object often helps the public emotionally understand a system too large to see all at once. A dog makes routes, schedules, sorting cars, mailbags, and junctions humanly memorable. The same is true of the Golden Spike. Promontory was not merely an engineering completion point. It was a national media event. Locomotives were positioned facing each other. Officials gathered. Ceremonial spikes and tools provided symbols. Photographers composed the scene. The telegraph transmitted the completion across the country. Years of labor, legislation, finance, surveying, hunger, forest cutting, blasting, and political conflict were compressed into one frame. The photograph did not lie. It was incomplete. Every photograph excludes most of the system that made the photograph possible. Every monument isolates one person or moment from the network behind it. A systems analysis asks what is outside the frame. Who supplied the materials? Who performed the labor? Who owned the land? Who financed the work? Who wrote the legislation? Who cooked the food? Who treated the injuries? Who controlled the transportation? Who was missing from the ceremony? Who preserved the photograph? Who later wrote the museum label? Morgan saw this tension inside the Railroad Museum. The building contains at least two histories. The first is the history described by the exhibits. The second is the history of how the museum itself selected and interpreted that evidence. Which locomotives survived? Which private railcars were preserved? Which corporate records entered archives? Which executives left letters? Which workers had the opportunity to write? Which families had the power to save documents? Which communities could fund preservation? Which signs were installed when the museum first opened? Which interpretive panels were added decades later? The newer material about women, Chinese workers, native communities, race, sexuality, and previously overlooked figures is visible partly because it has been added around an older physical collection. The older heroic narrative remains embedded in the size of the locomotives, the luxury cars, corporate artifacts, portraits, and architecture. That can create imbalance. Correcting an omission does not automatically produce a perfect interpretation. But returning to omission is not the answer. The Better Museum explains the editorial process. What happened? What evidence survives? Why did that evidence survive? How did earlier generations interpret it? What do later scholars understand differently? What is disputed? What remains unknown? Who is absent from the archive? The unheard are not absent from history. They may be absent from the filing system. That is why Anna Judah's paintings and pressed flowers matter so much. Theodore Judah surveyed the Sierra. Anna Judah observed and represented it through art. A survey translates landscape into distance, elevation, grade, curvature, and construction possibility. A painting translates landscape into human perception. A pressed flower records that one living thing existed in one particular place at one particular time. The country remembers the golden spike. But before the spike, there was a pressed flower. Art makes a distant place visible. A map makes it measurable. A survey makes it buildable. A political campaign makes it fundable. A law makes it authorized. Labor makes it physical. Rail and telegraph make it continental. Continental transportation increases economic and military power. The flower did not literally build the railroad, but it can sit near the beginning of a real causal chain. Observation, representation, persuasion, legislation, capital, labor, infrastructure, national power. Morgan connects Anna Judah's work to William Keith and John Muir, then to Ansel Adams, then to documentary filmmakers such as Ken Burns. Painting and writing made distant landscapes emotionally visible. Photography made them reproducible as evidence. Documentary film combined still images, letters, narration, music, and time into national memory. Today, mobile live streaming adds another layer. The audience does not only see the completed documentary months or years later. It can travel with the field researcher while the mental model is still being constructed. This expedition is not simply presenting a finished conclusion. It is allowing the public to watch the connections form. Theodore Judah also illustrates the difference between engineering knowledge and control of capital. He helped identify and advocate for the route. Local figures promoted particular alignments partly because transportation would increase local business, land value, and commercial power. A route could be technically sound and commercially self-interested at the same time. The engineer could support it because it was physically workable. A merchant could support it because it would bring customers. A corporation could support it because of subsidies, land, and future traffic. Congress could support it because of mail, commerce, war, and national unity. The same project can contain multiple motives without one motive canceling all the others. Judah died while traveling east seeking financial support and attempting to change who controlled the project. The financiers survived him. Engineering knowledge helped define what could be built. Capital determined who controlled what was built. Among the major railroad investors, Leland Stanford may have achieved the most durable name, because railroad wealth was converted into a university. A fortune can disappear. A corporation can merge. A mansion can be demolished. A university repeats a founder's name every day. The name appears on degrees, research, hospitals, maps, news reports, athletic events, applications, buildings, and archives. The institution also preserves evidence that allows later generations to criticize the history that created it. Power produces archive. Archives can later challenge power. Morgan had walked the Stanford campus before arriving at this museum. That meant the name Stanford was no longer merely attached to a locomotive or governor. Railroad fortune, a political career, a university, preserved documents, modern research, and the recovery of Chinese railroad worker history. One institution can reproduce both legacy and criticism of that legacy. This expedition is now leaving Sacramento and moving toward the physical construction sequence. Oakland represents an early railroad service center, granite, locomotive operations, and the point where the grade began demanding more from the machines. Newcastle represents a temporary edge of the system, where trains stopped and people and freight transferred to roads and stages. Bloomer Cut represents the enormous earth-moving required even before the most famous summit tunnels. Colfax represents staging, supplies, construction logistics, and the transition into serious mountain work. Cape Horn represents the challenge of placing a railroad along an exposed canyon face. That represents mining, a major Chinese community, local railroad promotion, and the wagon road supply system required before the rails themselves could reach the summit. Alta Blue Canyon and Cisco represent moving railheads, worker settlements, sawmills, timber, winter survival, and the increasingly difficult task of keeping construction supplied. Donner Summit represents the tunnels, vertical shaft, China wall, snowsheds, camps, granite, explosives, surveying, and the 16-month fact that exploded inside Morgan's mental model. Truckee represents what happened after the celebrated breakthrough: maintenance, logging, snow operations, depots housing food, repair, tourism, and the constant labor required to keep a supposedly completed railroad functioning. Reno represents the railroad becoming part of a later urban and regional system. The Pony Express crossed the Sierra farther south, generally through the Folsom, Placerville, Echo Summit, and Carson corridor. The Transcontinental Railroad crossed through the Donner Corridor. The routes are not identical. That difference is itself a lesson. The same mountain produces different paths for horses, wagons, railroads, highways, electrical systems, pipelines, and communications networks. The shortest line on a map is not always the workable route for a particular technology. Every vehicle experiences geography differently. Beyond Reno, the curriculum continues. LA, Nevada, preserves the ecosystem of a working mining railroad. Locomotives, shops, track, fuel, water repair, worker spaces, and the connection between resource extraction and national transportation. Promontory preserves the meeting point, the competing grades, the Big Fill, the famous ceremony, and the area where the Central Pacific established its extraordinary one-day track-laying record. Ogden shows what happened after the ceremony. Interchange, warehouses, hotels, schedules, passengers, freight, workers, vice migration, and the city required to make a continental connection operational. Cheyenne shows the mature heavy freight system, division point operations, shops, maintenance, fuel, skilled labor, and the big boy locomotives built to move enormous trains over western grades. Council Bluffs form the eastern counterpart to Sacramento, a major river, a transfer problem, a construction origin, corporate organization, and the eventual need for a bridge to connect systems that initially remained physically separated. Town in Scranton preserves the roundhouse, turntable, shops, maintenance labor, an industrial ecosystem of mature steam railroading. The National Postal Museum in Washington preserves ONI and the railway mail service story. Washington itself contains the legal and political center behind the physical systems. The Pacific Railway Act, military strategy, postal policy, land grants, immigration law, Chinese exclusion, corporate regulation, government contracting, national preservation, indigenous policy, environmental law, public finance. Morgan is not traveling toward Washington simply to arrive at the capital. He is traveling east so that Washington's documents will already have physical meaning. A law will connect to a tunnel. A subsidy will connect to a grade. An immigration statute will connect to a worker camp. A military objective will connect to a railroad timetable. A postal policy will connect to a mail car. A land grant will connect to a town. An environmental regulation will connect to a forest that was cut down. A contracting rule will connect to two companies grading beyond the useful meeting point. President School began with Santa Monica because Morgan knew the city well enough to recognize the gaps between official descriptions and lived systems. He studied city council meetings, public comment, disability access, transit, airports, parks, water, hygiene, housing, healthcare, emergency response, public communication. He compared Santa Monica with Santa Clarita and other parts of Los Angeles County. That built a city and county model. Fieldwork added rivers, dams, levees, ports, mines, missions, forts, parks, railroads, agriculture, electrical systems, highways, and state government. That built a state model. This expedition adds federal law, continental logistics, national defense, migration, industrial policy, public finance, national parks, and the relationship between Washington and distant communities. That begins the national model. The goal is not to memorize every fact. The goal is to recognize patterns that repeat, transfer points, bottlenecks, prepositioning, latency, incentive failure, fragmented authority, control of food and housing, mission creep, life cycle maintenance, environmental costs, narrative ownership, institutional memory, access, exclusion, the difference between an activity and an outcome. These patterns apply far beyond railroads. They apply to hospitals, defense projects, airports, ports, electrical grids, city departments, digital platforms, transportation systems, social services, climate infrastructure, emergency response. Asks a continuing political question. How can government mobilize resources at a scale private actors cannot reach alone while preventing the project from becoming a mechanism for waste, exploitation, corruption, exclusion, and private capture? The honest answer cannot simply be that government is bad or corporations are bad. The railroad required federal law and private organization. It required engineers, local boosters, foreign labor, national finance, and military objectives, logistics, and political authority. It produced enormous public benefits. So produced private fortunes, environmental destruction, displacement, racial exploitation, redundant construction, and concentrated power. Both sides of the ledger are real. Government must be capable enough to build. It must also be capable enough to supervise what it builds. It must understand the technical work well enough not to surrender oversight to the contractor. It must preserve institutional knowledge so every generation does not repeat the same mistakes. It must include maintenance, adaptation, and eventual replacement in the original design. It must plan transfer points, not merely build symbolic objects. It must measure whether the public can actually use the system. A tunnel that cannot clear the next generation of trains eventually becomes a new bottleneck. A railway without food and housing for workers is not a functioning construction system. A transit station without safe access is not truly accessible transportation. A shower without a changing area creates an order of operations failure. A hospital without reliable information transfer is not an integrated care system. An agency without authority to solve the final problem is not accountability. The public outcome must remain the design center. This stream began near mile 0. But there is no true zero in infrastructure. Before the first rail came the mine, the foundry, the forest, the ship, the river, the wagon road, the survey, the law, the investor, the recruited worker, the food shipment, and the idea. After the golden spike came Alameda, Oakland, Benicia, train ferries, bridges, larger locomotives, different fuels, new tunnels, highway aviation, container shipping, digital networks, and historical preservation. Every beginning has prerequisites. Every ending becomes a transfer point. Morgan Gross is traveling east not to collect disconnected facts, but to understand the causal chains binding them together. Sacramento to Rockland, Newcastle to Colfax, Dutch Flat to Donner, Truckee to Reno, Ellie to Promontory, Ogden to Cheyenne, Omaha to Scranton, the Pony Express to Aoni. Anna Judah's pressed flowers to the Golden Spike photograph, the Pacific Railway Act to the physical grade, Chinese labor to Chinese exclusion, the 1919 Army convoy to the interstate highway system, a Santa Monica City Council meeting to the laws and agencies of Washington, D.C., a local campaign to understand a national government, a filmmaker's eye becoming a systems analyst's model, a presidential candidate studying what the presidency actually governs. The train is not the whole story. The railroad is not the whole story. The story is the system of systems. It is the political decision that determines where the line goes. The economic incentive that determines how far the contractor continues. The labor arrangement that determines who receives food and housing. The immigration law that determines who can build a family. The fuel system that determines which forests are cut and which mines are opened. The transfer point that determines who captures the profit. The archive that determines whose voice survives. The museum sign that determines what the public is invited to notice. The camera frame that determines what remains outside the image. We are eastbound now. We are heading out on the second Transcontinental Expedition. We are continuing a presidential campaign built not only on speeches, but on field study. On visiting the places. On reading the plaques. On noticing the missing signs. On asking the docents another question. On walking through the tunnel before hearing how quickly it was built. On connecting the generating station to the distribution station. On connecting the law in Washington to the stone wall in the Sierra. On understanding that a pressed flower, a labor strike, a corporate contract, a boiler, a levee, a ferry, a mail bag, and a national military strategy can all belong to the same story. The field lesson has begun.
So we're right now driving. That was a fun speech from the robot. I mean, it was pretty vague. It didn't give any facts and stuff. But I'm driving on Folsom Boulevard, parallel to the train route, which is separate from the Highway 50 route. So. Oh, there's California sycamores everywhere. It's pretty cool. I need some water eventually. That was a whole bunch talking about stories and vague stuff. Now give me all of that, but is told from like a historian perspective rather than like give them the information of everything that we talked about. Your gas tax, is it? Alright, so it looks like we have a main train line and then 2 tracks next to it with electric over it. Looks like 3. I'm looking at 3. Oh, but then we stop. We go down to 1. Oh, the other one doesn't stop at the train station. That's how it works. Are there buses that go on the tracks like trucks go on tracks? Because they're a bus train. California Trail Pony Express route. I'm on both. This is it. We're on the Pony Express and the Transcontinental Railroad right now. That's kind of cool. Do you think the railroad is normally on the south side of the road or the north side of the road? Well, what the F is this place over here? What's going on with this architecture? It's like facades are so cartoony. Can you see this? Well, you can't see it. I can't see it. It's goofy. Oh. Yeah, this is so much bandwidth, so much data, and the thing is like this one stream is basically the entire. This is gonna be like, I'm gonna have to. If I'm gonna do lots of streaming, I'm gonna need to do this on Starlink because this is the moon. It's not dropping. Go Rotary. Rotary did something sweet. What did I see them do? Rotary made a fruit on a there was like a sewage channel in like West Sacramento that was like then turned into like a bike path. But then Rotary came and implanted fruit tree grove up and down the whole path. And you're like, duh. 150 trees or something? Awesome. Pomegranates, apples, a whole bunch of stuff. It's a no-brainer. So while you're walking on your walk, you grab the app. This world is weird. Yeah, there's two separate tracks. It looks like the ones are much more modern. The other ones have the more standard nails. These have those twisty ties. I have the under. Oh, we got train people doing train stuff. Oh, there's a bunch. They were on the middle track.
Eastbound, a historian's account of the transcontinental system. We are leaving Sacramento at the beginning of a transcontinental expedition and presidential campaign. This narration is to explain what was built here, how it was built, who paid for it, who profited from it, who performed the labor, what resources were consumed, and how the railroad reorganized the political and economic geography of the United States. We begin in Old Sacramento, because this was the western construction origin of the Central Pacific Railroad. The visible historical designations here are somewhat confusing. We located California Historical Landmark number 812 for Old Sacramento, on 2nd Street between I and J Streets. The larger Old Sacramento Historic District has also been designated a National Historic Landmark District, but we did not find a separate federal plaque announcing that district status. The B.F. Hastings Building has its own federal recognition as a National Historic Landmark because it served as the western terminus of the Pony Express during most of that service's short existence. The Pony Express corridor is additionally recognized as a National Historic Trail. The railroad's Mile Zero is principally identified through state and engineering commemoration, rather than through a separate federal historical park, comparable to Golden Spike in Utah. That difference in commemoration reflects a difference in the histories themselves. The Pony Express operated as a named service for a short, bounded period. Its riders carried mail between St. Joseph, Missouri, and Sacramento, with mail continuing from Sacramento to San Francisco by steamer. Its route and purpose can be described as a closed episode. The Transcontinental Railroad was not a closed episode. It was an evolving network whose western endpoint moved repeatedly as new track, ferries, wharves, bridges, and ports were added. Sacramento is the best answer to the question, where did Western construction of the first transcontinental railroad begin? Central Pacific construction began here and advanced eastward. Promontory Summit is the answer to the different question. Where did the Central Pacific and Union Pacific construction fronts meet? Alameda became the first San Francisco Bay terminal reached by a Central Pacific train on September 6, 1869. Oakland became the regular terminus of transcontinental trains on November 8 of that year, with passengers transferring to ferries for San Francisco. The Oakland Long Wharf expanded that system beginning in 1871. San Francisco was therefore the commercial destination, without initially being the physical end of the rails. Niles Canyon seems geographically confusing, because it lies southeast of Oakland and far south of the direct Sacramento Bay route we use today. It mattered because the early all-rail connection approached the bay through the Central Valley, Altamont Pass, Livermore Valley, and Niles Canyon. The Western Pacific began grading in the canyon with Chinese labor, and Central Pacific resumed the work after acquiring the line. This southern approach helped deliver the railroad to Alameda and Oakland before the later, shorter route through Benicia and Port Costa became available. Benicia belongs to a later version of the network. Entire trains were eventually ferried across the Carquinez Strait between Benicia and Port Costa, avoiding the long southern loop through Niles Canyon. That was an intermodal solution. Railroad cars rolled onto a vessel, crossed open water, and rolled back onto rails. The ferry itself was later displaced when a bridge provided a continuous rail crossing. The sequence was not railroad replacing ferry once and for all. It was railroad using ferry until railroad engineering could replace the ferry. This rapid succession of routes resembles modern software, or electronic devices more than we ordinarily admit. Infrastructure built in the 19th century could become secondary within a decade. Alameda was the first bay arrival, but Oakland became the durable terminal. Niles Canyon provided the early route, but Benicia created a shorter one. The train ferry solved the water crossing, but the bridge superseded it. The original Summit tunnels solved the mountain, but later locomotives and double-stack container trains created new clearance requirements. Sacramento itself was never merely a railroad point. It was a river port, mining supply center, political capital, agricultural distribution center, levee city, and communications hub. Ocean-going vessels could not simply sail to every inland landing, so cargo moved through combinations of ocean ships, bay ferries, river steamers, warehouses, wagons, and railroads. Sacramento's later Deepwater Channel represented an attempt to bring larger maritime traffic farther inland. The same enlargement process occurred at canals, ports, and railroad tunnels. As the vehicles became larger, the channels and structures had to be deepened, widened, reinforced, or bypassed. The river also links Sacramento to the Pacific Ocean through the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. The city may look inland, but tides, sea level change, levee stability, freshwater exports, agriculture, habitat, and shipping connected to San Francisco Bay. Chinese labor became deeply important, not only in mountain railroad construction, but also in California agriculture, mining, road building, and the physical remaking of lowland landscapes after railroad employment declined. The railroad cannot be separated from the Delta, because both were parts of the same expanding market system. Before the railroad, California operated under extreme communication delay. News had to travel physically. A military commander on the Pacific coast might have current local observations, but no current instructions from Washington. Washington might have legal authority and national intelligence, but information about California that was months old. Helps explain the mistaken American seizure of Monterey in 1842 and the more cautious decision-making surrounding the actual war with Mexico several years later. It is an early example of what might now be called decision-making at the edge of a network. The local commander had autonomy because immediate confirmation from the center was impossible. The danger was acting too quickly on false information or waiting too long for information that could not arrive in time. Gold produced a similar information cycle. A discovery occurred locally. Rumors spread. Samples and official reports had to travel east. Officials and investors assessed credibility. Public confirmation then produced migration and capital flows back toward California.
Because the
market at the site reacted immediately, while the national response arrived in delayed waves. Placerita Canyon preserves the site of California's first gold discovery in 1842. James Marshall's discovery at Sutter's Mill in January 1848 was not the first discovery, but it became the discovery that ignited the famous gold rush and the resulting international migration. This illustrates why historical words such as first must always be followed by a more precise question. First discovery is not necessarily the same as first discovery to generate national transformation. The gold rush economy was governed by scarcity, transportation costs, and control of bottlenecks. Stories about an inexpensive shovel in the East selling for several dollars in California, or an egg commanding an extraordinary price, should be tied to a specific place and date before being quoted as universal prices. But the economic mechanism is sound. A shovel's California price incorporated manufacturing, packing, ocean transport, insurance, unloading, storage, river or wagon transfer, risk, scarcity, and the seller's ability to wait. An egg's price reflected the difficulty of producing or delivering perishable food into a rapidly expanding population. The useful comparison is not only modern inflation. It is the amount of labor required to buy the object. If a worker earned roughly $30 or $35 in a month, a $1 meal item would represent a severe expense regardless of what a modern inflation calculator reports. The miners faced uncertain return. They could work for weeks without finding enough gold. The suppliers could sell food, tools, clothing, transportation, credit, and shelter to nearly everyone. Banks and merchants could profit from repeated transactions. Shipping companies controlled access. Landowners benefited from rising values. Eastern manufacturers earned money from California demand without physically entering the mining fields. Financiers could profit through securities, land claims, and corporate control. That creates a recurring economic principle. The person performing the extraction may absorb the greatest physical risk, while the person controlling an unavoidable bottleneck receives the more dependable income. The railroad intensified that system. It reduced transport costs in general, but it also concentrated power in the owners of routes, terminals, land, freight rates, corporate stock, and political relationships.
Old train route,
it connected distant capital to Western resources.
The new train tracks are
the same line that allowed farmers or merchants to reach national markets also allowed national corporations to reach local timber, minerals, land, and consumers. The legal foundation was the Pacific Railway Act of 1862, signed during the Civil War. The act supplied federal assistance through land and loans and authorized a railroad and telegraph connection between the Missouri River and the Pacific. The government expected the line to serve commerce, mail, and national purposes. It was not merely a private railroad that happened to cross public land. It was a public-private project created through federal law. That structure generated extraordinary construction, but it also created opportunities for private capture and incentive failure. The government wanted a useful continental connection. The companies were motivated by construction payments, land, corporate control, and the value created by additional mileage. If the legal stopping point was unclear, both companies had reason to continue grading and strengthening their claims. Near Promontory, the Central Pacific and Union Pacific constructed competing, and sometimes parallel grades. Today, the surviving grades make visible a problem familiar in modern contracting. Government can reward a measurable activity without perfectly rewarding the desired outcome. The desired outcome was connection. The measurable activity was construction. The companies optimized the activity until Congress and federal authorities fixed the meeting point. This does not mean every extra grade was pure fraud, or that the companies were irrational. It means the contract and legislation allowed private organizations to pursue their own advantage, while nominally advancing a public purpose. That is a principal agent problem. The public, acting through government, was the principal. The corporations were agents with more detailed knowledge about construction, costs and routes than the government possessed. The same pattern continues in modern procurement. Cost reimbursement contracts can be reasonable when government is purchasing experimental technology whose true cost cannot be known in advance. But such arrangements may weaken incentives to economize. Fixed price contracts create stronger cost pressure, but they can produce unrealistically low bids, concealment of problems, corner cutting, or repeated demands for modifications when the requirements were immature. The historical lesson is not that one contract type is always good. It is that government must define the outcome, payment metric, risk allocation, technical milestones, and stopping condition. Promontory's parallel grades are a physical record of what happens when completion is not defined soon enough.
The Nimbus Station.
Theodore Judah was the central engineer and promoter of the Central Pacific route. He had previously worked on the Sacramento Valley Railroad to Folsom. He surveyed the Sierra and advocated a line using the ridge route through the Dutch Flat region and across Donner Pass. Local boosters supported the route partly because rail traffic would increase business and land values. Daniel Dock, Strong of Dutch Flat, is commonly associated with directing Judah's attention toward that route. Strong was a local druggist and businessman who had an obvious commercial interest in placing the railroad near Dutch Flat. Historians should be careful with the simplified story that one druggist simply discovered the route and gave it to Judah. Some of that account depends heavily on later recollection.
It's talking to me.
The more reliable conclusion is that engineering judgment, local knowledge, commercial lobbying, and political promotion interacted. A route can be technically sound and commercially self-interested at the same time. Judah could support it because he believed the grade was feasible. Strong could support it because Dutch Flat would gain traffic. Sacramento investors could support it because the railroad would increase their wealth and influence. Congress could support the overall project because of mail, commerce, military logistics, and national unity. Judah then lost effective control to the Sacramento investors remembered as the Big Four: Leland Stanford, Collis P. Huntington, Mark Hopkins, and Charles Crocker. Judah traveled east seeking financing and support to regain control or buy out those interests. He contracted yellow fever while crossing the Isthmus of Panama and died in New York in 1863. His death illustrates the division between invention and ownership. The engineer identified and advocated the route. The financiers controlled the corporation that completed it. Technical authorship does not guarantee control over the institution created from the idea. Among the Big Four, Stanford secured the most continuously reproduced name because he and Jane Stanford converted railroad wealth into a university. Crocker and Huntington also left major commercial and cultural legacies, but a university repeatedly prints its founder's name on degrees, research, buildings, hospitals, maps, and news reports. It can preserve documents, educate leaders, and continuously reproduce historical memory. Stanford University also became a center for research recovering the history of Chinese railroad workers.
Pass through the Iron Point
That
Station.
creates a complicated institutional cycle. Railroad wealth created the university. The university preserved railroad records. Later scholars used institutional resources to expose exploitation and historical exclusion connected to the source of that wealth. Stanford's Chinese Railroad Workers in North America project was created in part because Chinese workers had been nearly erased from the centennial commemoration in 1969. From Sacramento, the physical construction route becomes a sequence of changing engineering and logistical problems. Rockland was important as an early service and operating point. Railroad left the Sacramento Valley and began climbing. Locomotives required maintenance, fuel, water, inspection, and eventually more assistance. Nearby granite and other materials tied the railroad to extractive industries. Newcastle functioned for a time as the practical edge of the operating railroad. When track ended, passengers advance again. Bloomer Cut demonstrated the scale of excavation even before the summit granite. A railroad requires controlled grades. Locomotives can pull enormous loads along steel rails, but they are highly sensitive to steep slopes and sharp curvature. A hill that a wagon can climb slowly may be unacceptable for a main railroad. The railroad therefore cut through elevations and filled depressions to manufacture a smoother geometry through the landscape.
That's a lot of eucalyptus trees.
Colfax became a construction and supply center at the beginning of the more difficult mountain segment.
I've never
Its
seen
importance
so many
extended beyond the original construction period.
Wow.
During later emergencies, including the 1952 stranding of the Streamliner city of San Francisco, Western rescue and snow clearing operations were organized through the same general corridor. The museum's digital exhibit records that 225 passengers were trapped for 3 days in January 1952.
We're in the Folsom Junction right now.
The episode demonstrated that even a mature railroad equipped with snow-fighting machinery could still be overwhelmed by the Sierra. Cape Horn represented the problem of carrying the railroad along a steep canyon wall. It required cutting, grading, retaining structures, and careful alignment. Some popular stories about Chinese workers being lowered in baskets from the cliff have been challenged by historians, who find stronger documentary evidence for more conventional, though still extremely dangerous, excavation and retaining wall work. A responsible field account should distinguish documented engineering from later legend. Dutch Flat was essential because the railroad depended on a road before the rails reached the summit. The Dutch Flat Donner Lake Wagon Road carried people, supplies, tools, animals, and construction materials ahead of the railhead.
Howard Terminal.
It is one of the clearest examples of new infrastructure being constructed through an older mode that it would later displace. Dutch Flat also connects mining, local promotion, Chinese community history, wagon logistics, and railroad finance. The town was not simply a picturesque stop. It was part of the economic and political machinery that helped select and supply the route. Alta, Blue Canyon, and Cisco marked the advance into higher elevation, heavier snow, and greater isolation. The challenge was not only cutting the grade. Workers had to be fed, housed, and supplied while the construction front kept moving. Hills, water sources, storage areas, camps, temporary buildings, animal facilities, roads, and telegraph lines followed or preceded the grade. A work camp was an industrial settlement. It required cooking, waste disposal, shelter, blacksmithing, tool repair, medical responses, powder storage, and transportation. Thousands of workers could not be sustained by a locomotive and a pile of rails alone. The summit region concentrated the largest problems. Crews had to excavate through granite, construct tunnels, create retaining structures such as the China Wall, establish grades across ravines, and keep the route passable through some of the heaviest snowfall encountered by an American railroad. The China Wall is a large dry laid stone retaining structure associated with the summit tunnel complex. Individual stones were fitted to create a stable support for the railroad grade. The wall is not a decorative monument built after the railroad. It is part of the working infrastructure. At Summit Tunnel number 6, workers attacked the mountain from both portals. They also sank a vertical shaft roughly 75 feet through the granite to reach the tunnel level. The shaft took approximately 85 days to complete. Once it reached the planned elevation, crews could excavate in 2 additional directions from inside the mountain. The project therefore had 4 active headings, eastward and westward from the 2 portals, and eastward and westward from the central shaft. This was the tunnel-scale version of the Continental Railroad. Central Pacific advanced east. Union Pacific advanced west. Inside the mountain, crews advanced inward from both ends and outward from the center. Parallel construction saved calendar time by increasing the number of active faces, but it multiplied the demands for surveying, ventilation, explosives, debris removal, supervision, and supplies. The 16-month figure heard on the museum tour was so striking because the physical